Across the American Midwest, winter still ruled the landscape. Frozen sidewalks stretched across neighborhoods. Gray skies hung low over highways. Windshields needed scraping before sunrise. Breath turned to vapor in the cold morning air. It was supposed to be just another February week. Cold, predictable, routine. But within hours, everything would change. What began as thick, blinding fog and icy roads would end in record-breaking warmth, from freezing danger to spring-like heat in less than a single day. This is the story of how one powerful, moisture-filled air mass transformed the Midwest, and what that dramatic shift reveals about the growing intensity of modern weather. Mid-February is usually winter's final stand in this region. In cities like Evansville, Rochester, Chicago, Des Moines, and St. Louis, February means stubborn snowbanks and icy mornings. Temperatures hover near freezing. The ground remains chilled from months of cold air pressing down from the north. Residents expect slow commutes and school delays. They expect slick bridges and salt-covered highways. It is a season people know how to handle. But in the days leading up to February 16th, something invisible was building high above the surface. A low-pressure system began strengthening over the plains. And far to the south, over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, a massive body of warm, humid air was gathering strength. This was not typical winter air. It was thick with moisture. It was unusually warm for February, and powerful winds began pulling it northward. To understand what happened next, it helps to understand one simple idea. An air mass is a large body of air with similar temperature and moisture throughout. When air sits over warm ocean water, it absorbs heat and humidity. That warmth and moisture stay locked inside it as it moves. This particular air mass had spent time over the Gulf of Mexico. It gathered heat from the water. It absorbed vast amounts of moisture. It carried energy. Then strong southerly winds lifted it north toward frozen land. Imagine an invisible river flowing through the sky, thick, humid, moving steadily toward the cold Midwest. The ground across much of the region was still frozen. Snow patches lingered. Roads had absorbed months of winter chill. When warm, moist air moves across a cold surface, the lower layer of that air cools quickly. And when humid air cools, it can no longer hold all its moisture. That moisture turns into tiny droplets, and those droplets form fog. On the evening of February 16th, the fog began forming quietly. At first it seemed ordinary. A light haze along rural roads, a slight blur around streetlights. But as night deepened, the fog thickened. By midnight, visibility across parts of Indiana, Ohio, and New York dropped dramatically. In some places, drivers could see only a few feet in front of their vehicles. Highways became corridors of white silence. Streetlights glowed faintly through a milky blur. Buildings disappeared into gray emptiness. Sound felt softer, almost muffled. In Evansville, commuters prepared for morning travel only to discover that the world outside had shrunk to a narrow tunnel of limited sight. In Rochester, temperatures hovered near freezing. There, the situation became even more dangerous. Tiny droplets within the fog froze instantly when they touched cold pavement. Bridges became slick. Overpasses turned treacherous. Sidewalks developed thin layers of invisible ice. This was freezing fog, subtle but hazardous. Unlike a snowstorm, it offered no dramatic visual warning. No swirling flakes, no obvious accumulation. Just a quiet coating of ice forming in near zero visibility. Accidents increased. Cars drifted off shoulders. Rear-end collisions became common. Emergency responders moved cautiously through white silence, their lights flashing in a world that felt erased. Schools delayed openings. Some closed altogether. Morning routines were disrupted. For hours, the Midwest was suspended in a fog-bound stillness. But as the sun rose on February 17th, something shifted. The same southerly winds that had delivered the moist air began strengthening. The atmosphere started to mix more deeply. The inversion that trapped the fog near the surface slowly weakened. The gray sky began to brighten. The fog thinned. Patches of blue appeared. Then sunlight broke through. Temperatures began rising steadily. 35 degrees became 45. 45 became 55. Within hours, Winter loosened its grip. By afternoon, Evansville climbed into the mid-60s. Des Moines approached 70 degrees. Chicago surged into the mid-60s.